Thank you for listening to the BJJ Brick Podcast. We'll be bringing you Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and good times. We hope to flatten your Jiu-Jitsu learning curve, help you get the most out of your grappling ability, and meet your goals both on and off the mat.
Welcome back, my friends. Episode 83 of the BJJ Brick Podcast. I'm Gary, and I'm here with my trusty co-host, Byron. How are you doing today, Byron?
Gary, I'm doing really good. Excited to be...
That's what I like to hear. You listeners are lucky today. We've got a great episode as always. Today we have an interview with Mark Mullen. It's going to be very informative and a good time.
So this is kind of cool for us, back-to-back two well-known Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu authors. So that's really kind of fun.
We're branching out a little bit. It's kind of neat.
Yeah, we get athletes, we get coaches, we get authors, and of course the authors are coaches, but they take the time to put the pen to paper, keyboard to computer screen, whatever you call it, and get their ideas down. And I think when you do that, you have a better way of explaining things, and the way Mark communicates is very effective, and the way he teaches is a great way to learn from. Saying that real quick, Mark also has. He writes a lot of articles for Gracie Baja, and he also is available to do some freelance writing. If you have a website or you're looking to get a little help with your articles there, get a hold of Mark, and he'll be happy to help you out.
Yeah, that's definitely awesome right there. It's a lot of times it's hard to write that article. Some people have that talent. Some of us, like myself, do not.
I've written a few articles, and it is difficult for me, and that's why we're doing a podcast, Gary.
Yeah, we figured out what our skills were and went this way instead.
You got to go with what you're naturally. I don't know if we're any good at it, but we have fun with it, right, Gary?
Yeah, that's what it's all about, having fun. Just like Jiu-Jitsu, we want to have fun.
If you want to help us have fun here and keep cost affordable for us, there's some costs associated with the podcast. Not the least of which is obviously our time that we spend making this, but there's some internet costs and like that if you want to help us out, or if you are in your first year of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and want a little bit of help from us, we have an audiobook available for sale. It's called Your First Year in BJJ.
And definitely Byron took the time and made a great audiobook. The reviews have been off the hook. People who've bought it have really loving it. So definitely check it out. It's well worth $11.99. Yep,
it's 2.5 hours of just me talking to you like it's your, what I would like to say if it's doing your first year of training and get you on the right path.
So definitely check it out, and it's a nice little roadmap there for your first year in Jiu-Jitsu. Yep.
We also have a email list you can get signed up for. It's on our website or on our Facebook page. Just enter in your name and email address. You can download a little sample of the audiobook is on there. And there's also some other short, 30-minute or 20-minute little clips about Jiu-Jitsu that we've made. So good times on there.
Definitely good times.
And if you sign up for that, don't expect the email right away. We're not rolling in the dough, so I didn't pay however much it is for the email subscription to get mailed out. They get mailed out every Tuesday, so on Tuesday we got to wait a little while. It's like it's snail mail style. You got to wait till Tuesday to get your mail.
It'll get there. That's all that counts.
Yep, there'll be a link at the very bottom of the email. It'll be to Dropbox folder, and that is where all the sweet BJJ Brick action will be found.
Byron, you owe me again this week. I was talking about it. Hey, it's all about having fun.
Yeah.
And that segued you into this again. That's, I think, 3 times in the last 2 episodes.
We're after 80 some odd episodes, after 83 episodes, we're finally starting to get some flow together.
Well, the crazy thing is, I'm not even trying to do that, and you're just jumping on it. I think you're a 3-stripe brown belt here in podcasting now.
No, I'm working on my
blue. I'm still at
blue. I'm working on my blue myself. I think there's a lot to learn, and much of which is getting my phone on silent and getting my dog to be calm before we get on air, which I did not do today, but she's just hanging out with me.
Yeah, and I don't think a lot of you guys realize it's normally not just Byron and I. The dog is there also. So there's actually 3 of us.
Yeah. You could hear her in a couple times, and she's in one of the videos I've made about grilled cheese. But other than that, she doesn't make a lot of appearances. Well, Gary, we better get back on track here, buddy.
Quote of the week.
This is a quote from Sam Spiegelman, last week's interview. So if you missed that, make sure to go by and check out last week's. But here is Sam Spiegelman.
I don't even know who I got this from or where it came about, but when I was going through all the stuff with my parents, always just popped in my head, it's not supposed to be easy, it's something that I've always kind of had in the back of my head, like, it's not going to be easy, and I don't know if it's a quote or a statement. I honestly don't even know where I picked it up from.
Yeah.
I'm sure somebody famous said it, but I think that is like my mindset in a nutshell. If you know going into it, it's not going to be easy. I think that just sums it up, man.
Yeah.
It's not going to be easy. It's not supposed to be easy,
And then you're not going to shy away from the challenge when it's presented in front of you because you expected it to be there.
Yeah. I mean, nothing's gonna be easy, man. Especially with jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. And then it's in life, everybody's going to have a tough time sometimes. So it's not supposed to be.
Yeah.
I mean, life isn't easy.
It's all in context. It could be, for some people, it could be, it doesn't have to be something as dramatic as that, but everybody's going to have challenges.
Yeah. Yep, that's a good one. A good attitude to have, especially during tough times. Or like you're on the top of the world, you think things are going great, and then boom, like 1 minute later, it's like, nope, not so good anymore. Like you said, you dread getting a phone call, or the mail, opening that skit kind of raises a hair in the back. It's like, anything could happen anytime. My phone could ring right now, and I can get very bad news, but it's not supposed to be easy. That's why it's one of the benefits of jiu-jitsu is it trains us to be resilient, like we were talking about earlier. So that was Sam Spiegelman with "It's Not Supposed to Be Easy," and that's good off and on the mat advice.
Yeah, you think about it. You become a resilient person. You're a tough person. You can take whatever's thrown in front of you. You know it's not going to be easy. You're going to fight through it. But the cool thing is when you finally get to the end of that road, or that problem, that journey, it's so much more rewarding because it was a tough time. If you just breeze through everything and got 100% on every test or whatever, it's not as rewarding where you had all these bumps and bruises, twists and turns, and you had to fight and claw your way to get to the end. And when you do get to the end, you just sit back, you got that PBR in your hand, and you're like, man, this was fun. This was rewarding.
Yeah, and it's, one of those days you go home and you're frustrated with jiu-jitsu or with anything in your life. It's not supposed to be easy, and you've gotten through a lot more before, and you're going to get through this, and just keep that in mind.
Yep, if you can get through jiu-jitsu, as tough as it is, I always say I can do anything in life.
I agree, Gary, but jiu-jitsu has the added benefit of being tough and fun, so it's an interesting combination which makes us tough automatically.
Well, yeah. Well, I don't know if it's always tough and fun, especially when you're older than Byron, because it's not fun getting smashed into the mat, but I guess it does make me tough.
All right, Gary, the music is telling us that it is time.
It's time for the article of the week.
All right, we have a good one here. It is from the website breakingmuscle.com. It is called 3 Important Questions to Help Recalibrate Your Training Focus, written by Valerie Worthington. And it starts off with kind of a story or just kind of an anecdote about when she was a kid, and I could relate highly to that.
Me too. I got to admit, I was laughing. It was great. Where she talks about no seat belts, and you'd put your arm across, and that arm would have a cigarette attached to it. And man, that was my life growing up right there. That's exactly how we did it.
Did the part that I related to more was getting in fights in the car. And having my parents either deal with it or just kind of let it go by. But I remember those little slug bug cars.
Yeah.
I remember one day my dad he had enough of that. He's like, every time we drive by a stupid car, you guys get in a fight. So anyway,
punching each other.
The first part of the article is a humorous kind of a story about growing up and fighting with her sister. And now she's helping. She kind of sees the relation of grapplers kind of just fighting with themselves about what they're doing. has interesting parallel. Obviously she doesn't want to actually, this is her sister. You can only fight so hard against your own sibling, I hope. But you fight with yourself. You mull something over. You try to figure out what's going on, and oftentimes what you're doing is not in your own best interest. And so she's got
get off track.
Yeah,
That's
3 questions here, Gary. So the first question she has you asking yourself to help you with that battle in your own head, maybe, would be finding your why. Which is great because we talked about that last episode. Why are you training? But she says sometimes in the day-to-day of our training routines, you forget why you're here. You get bogged down with other things like I must do this. You forgot why you originally came to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, or what is your motivating factor in going in training all the time?
Yeah, definitely. I really just like that because 2 weeks in a row we've talked about the why, and that's so important. Question number 2 she talks about is staying focused on your own goals. And a lot of times we get off track of our goals, and like she talks about, we discover that our needs have been sidelined in favor of somebody else's goals, and you don't really realize it's happening. You're just going down that path, and there could be reasons that got you off there, but you just need to get back and figure out what your goals are. Stay focused on those goals. It's about yourself. Let's take care of ourselves.
And the third question she'll have you ask yourself is, how does your training fit into your life? And this is an interesting question, especially if you train over the number of years. Your life will change, and your training, for me anyway, the training has been one constant I've had in my life for, 12 or 13 years now. And I've had many different jobs. I've been in school. I'm married now. I wasn't always married, and I've had some girlfriends through training, and the constant I've had was training. And but how that fits into my life, the different jobs changed my schedule. Having a relationship with different people and having different things with family, they all affect with how I'm able to train and how I have been able to train, and then my goals get adjusted accordingly.
I always think it's funny when you talk to people who are really into jiu-jitsu, and it's such an important part of one's life that I've seen people turn down jobs because the work schedule doesn't fit into their jiu-jitsu schedule. And it's crazy, but it's something, if you really love it, you need to be able to find time to train. You think about back when we started training, jiu-jitsu wasn't very popular. What did we have? 2 nights a week to train?
That was all right, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, man, I need those two days. I've got to have those 2 days off, and I couldn't imagine somebody telling me, "Hey, you're working Monday nights and Wednesday nights." Sorry, I can't.
Yeah, that would put a cramp in your style, I think.
Yeah.
Fortunately, now in most bigger cities, there's training every day. A lot of times, there's training different parts of the day.
Yeah, morning, noon, nighttime.
I find myself going to train when it's most convenient for my schedule and for the other people in my life, not necessarily when is the best time to go train. It's just, hey, looks like we got something going on tonight. I'm going to go train in the morning. Or I'm busy today with we got something going on family-wise. I'll have to pick it up tomorrow or something like, that. We're fortunate now, I think a lot of people are, that the training schedules are easier to work with.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. It makes a lot more convenient and a lot more family and work friendly.
She also says, when we are feeling tunnel vision about our training, reminding ourselves to maintain perspective can help broaden our horizon again and help us feel more stable. So that's
true.
I think you have a life off the mat. I mean,
yeah. And I mean, you have to have a good balance. It can't just be totally tilted in one way. And I kind of like the little picture she puts there. It's just, a little teeter-totter. You got work and life, and it's totally balanced right there.
Totally balanced. So it's usually it kind of teeters a little bit, but it should be balanced out in the long run. And we didn't go over much of the. If I think if you're born in the 70s or earlier, maybe I'm 79 myself, but
you're 79 years old.
I was born in 1979.
You're in great shape.
Well, thanks, Gary. You placed me up like 60, didn't you? You thought I was a bit younger than that.
Yeah,
I think if you're born in 80s and below,
you were saying the year you were born.
Read the read the opening part of the article, and I think you'll kind of laugh at the similar childhood experiences, especially if you had a sibling.
Yeah, it's definitely worth the read right there.
Yeah.
And I actually like the picture of the bug there. So the bus, can't miss that.
The bus. Before we get to the interview, I'm going to tell a little funny story because might as well. I worked with a guy who had one of those VW buses, and he just drove it because he loved it. He could have bought a regular car, but he really loved this old bus. I think it took him back to when he was a kid, and he got that bus. He had it for a few weeks. And me and a couple of buddies snuck out at night. So this is at the fire station. So we work 24 hours. So all day, all night, the car sits there. Snuck out at night, and of course, this car wasn't locked. And we put it in neutral and pushed it down the hill, and left it like resting on the curb, which was fine. It was out of the way. Nothing was going to happen to it. And then I got some oil and I kind of put it on like a little trail in the parking lot to the car, and it was like used cooking oil. Anyway, he gets up and he's getting his coffee and stuff, and he looks out the window and he screams. He goes, "My bus rolled!" And he gets out there and he makes sure it's okay. And then I get home, I get to worry, and he's going to go and have it fixed, which I guess it wasn't a priority of his anyway. But so I text him a picture of us in the bus that night. And that's when I gave myself up. But it's always fun to play little jokes on people. And I know Gary is fairly legendary for some of the pranks he's pulled.
No, not me. Not me. I say no to jokes.
Say no to jokes. But
jokes and jokes.
That's right. So you got to have fun. You got to, and that a little bit of the article. Have some balance in your life. You don't be too serious all the time either. Balance that out a little bit. But I think that wraps up the article pretty well.
Yep. And I hear the music coming, so you know what that means.
We're going to have another segment of Most Interesting Grappler, followed by our interview.
Awesome.
So here we go. He is the most interesting grappler in the world.
IBJJF does not make him register. He was the only man to wristlock Captain Hook. He once put a guillotine on the Horseman, now known as the Headless Horseman.
I don't always listen to podcasts, but when I do, I prefer the BJJ Brick podcast. Go for the submission, my friends.
All right, my friends, I'm happy to bring Mark Mullen to the BJJ Brick podcast. Mark, welcome to the show.
Hi, nice to be here. Really excited.
All right, we're excited to have you. You've got a lot of great stories to share and experiences. Mark, could you kind of just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm originally from Canada. I moved around a little bit over my life there. It's a pretty big country, as is the USA. I got started in the martial arts, I think, in around 94. I got started in judo. And at the time, I was looking for something to get out of just lifting weights in the gym and, trying to have big muscles to get girls. And I was, as most practitioners of the martial arts are, I got excited by the movies. And for me, it wasn't Bruce Lee or Chuck Norris, it was Steven Seagal. I thought he was the baddest ass on the planet. I wanted to have the leather jacket and the squint and the ponytail.
Yeah, what was the best Steven Seagal movie? I got to interrupt you here.
Above the Law.
Okay, good.
Quite possibly one of the best martial arts movies of all time, might I add. So I wanted to look for an Aiki Jiu-Jitsu dojo in the city I was living at the time, Vancouver, Canada, one of the most beautiful cities. And I couldn't find it. But I remembered a Japanese judo instructor Japanese jiu-jitsu instructor telling me he had started in judo. That's where he had learned his basics, his rolling break balls and all of this. And I thought, well, if it's good enough for him, it's good enough for me. So I got involved in judo with my younger brother, and we were pretty competitive with each other, as you could imagine. was very fortunate to get a Japanese judo coach who was teaching out of a few community centers in Vancouver. And he had come up through the Japanese university system and was a coach in Japan. So I got really excellent instruction from day one without even knowing that it was that excellent. So I did judo for a couple of years, and then around this time I became aware of something called the UFC. And like a lot of old school guys, we saw 170-pound Royce Gracie come out and tie up all these big 200-pound behemoths, and we didn't even know what he did. He did some move and a hold. So once I saw that, it was all different for me, and I used to roll around in community center on some mats with any buddies that wanted to learn this as well. And I was in the right place at the right time. 1997, the first Brazilian black belt moved to Canada. His name was Marcus Soares. I think he was a 5th or 6th degree black belt at the time from the actual Carlson Gracie Academy in Copacabana, Brazil. And at the time, I had a lot of free time to train in the day classes. And I was a very serious student. And I would show up with my notebook. I was already in good shape from weight training for years. I was a physical fitness fanatic. I had 2 years of judo, so I was already familiar with grappling in the gi. And my interest was at an all-time high, and I took to it like a duck to water.
Your story of seeing Royce and getting motivated is, I think, is something that I've heard a lot of times. It's just, I wonder if they knew how inspirational he was being out there in the octagon, and as we were just all blown away by what he was able to do. A tremendously motivating factor that set you well onto your way to where you are now.
Yes, and I'm at risk of sounding like one of those old guys. It used to be like this. But Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was very different at that time because it was synonymous with MMA, with what they called NHB or no holds barred fighting at the time. Now, since that early period of BJJ being introduced to North America, it has branched off into kind of separate sports almost. You have the BJJ for mixed martial arts. You've got the sport BJJ with all of the lapel techniques and the sleeves and the fancy guards. And then you have a school of thought that is more geared on self-defense.
Yeah.
Personal defense in the street against the common, aggressive attacks. But at that time, if you wanted to be a fighter, you would go to the BJJ club in your town. So it was much more of a hardcore atmosphere at that Marcus Soares Jiu-Jitsu club than you might see in a Gracie Baja these days, which has more of the emphasis on Jiu-Jitsu for everyone. And it was a hardcore training atmosphere. Marcus Soares, I remember one time said, "We are not fooling around here. We are here to create champions." And if you were looking for a nice hobby to do a couple times a week, this would be an uncomfortable reminder that there was a difference between training jiu-jitsu recreationally and trying to be a champion. And I was young enough and fit enough at the time to do my best to keep up. But there were people who would go on to have careers as professional MMA fighters and higher level competitors. And you could see there was quite a difference between the average person who just wanted to get a little exercise and this type of mentality.
Yeah, and I think that's something that you see, maybe it's more blended in today's schools. So you have part of the school is really focused on competition and creating athletes that do well, but they all seem to have that base anymore that helps pay the bills, that helps just have fun and just come in and train when they're available. Is that something that you would agree with?
Yes, I would say that there's basically three types of students that I see come through the doors of the academy. In the minority, but they're a very visible minority, would be the sports BJJ competitors. Let's add on to that the MMA competitors, which I have a lot at the current gym I'm at in Taipei. But most academies, these are, I think, statistically between 15 and 10% of any academy. Now, they really inspire us because they're the innovators. A lot of the innovation that we see in the evolution of modern BJJ comes from these sport competitors. It's an arms race, and they're trying to find ways to beat their competition. But it's really a smaller subset of the entire student, base. So if we say those would be, I guess, the first category. The second would be the BJJ people who are coming all of the time. They don't care about cross-training in kickboxing, Muay Thai, MMA, whatever. They just want to do BJJ as kind of a lifestyle. And this is where you'll find more of your colored belts. And then I'd say the third category would be the people who just want a fitness activity to do a couple times a week. They're never going to compete. They're not really that serious about it. But they're looking for something that's a little more interesting than, perhaps being on a stationary bike someplace for a few hours. And Jiu-Jitsu does offer something for that group of people as well. And it's very interesting to ask new students when they come in the academy, well, why did you choose this activity amongst all of the other potential distractions or leisure activities that are available in life? And you're very surprised at some of the answers you can get from people. So I've learned not to assume why one of these new students is coming into the class. I always take a moment and have a basic conversation with them beside the mat and say, so why did you get into this? What's interesting to you about this?
And that's an important question to ask as somebody who's running a school, to learn somebody's why they're showing up and why they're walking in your door originally. And their why might change over time, but it's valuable information to collect. Before we get carried on too much on this, I really got to know, you mentioned you're in Taipei, Taiwan. How'd you get there from Canada?
Long story short, I had long wanted to relocate to Asia because I love the food, the weather, the culture. I was really in need of a new challenge in my life. And I had just gotten my brown belt in BJJ, and I asked myself, well, what do you want to do here? You're within distance of getting that black belt. I would have to make some sacrifices in my career life and my personal life to do it. I knew I had to train a lot. But this could be a vehicle for me to relocate to Asia, have a way of meeting a bunch of people, get an employment visa from a country, and make a living while you're over there. It's one thing to go on holiday and save a bunch of money. It's another thing to actually relocate to another part of the world and generate an income. So I was adding different foreign BJJ clubs on my Facebook, and one morning, a former training partner of mine, who's actually my partner in my first ever BJJ class, he contacted me and said, hey, what's up? And I know that he was operating an academy in Seoul, Korea. He was a professional fighter that had over 50 fights and had achieved some level of notoriety in Japan and Korea. And he was over there. I told him that I'd been following his new academy there with some interest because I desired to someday move to Asia. And he paused and he said, are you kidding? No. He said, what a coincidence. Just this morning I got an offer from a MMA gym in Taiwan, and they're looking for an English-speaking black belt who doesn't want to just come there for a couple of months, see Asia, and then go back, who's willing to move there. And I said, well, send me the offer. Had a look. Sounded like the guy really knew what he wanted. So my fighter friend said, well, let me break the ice with him, and I'll introduce you. And within a few days, I had a written offer, got on Skype, just like we are now, right around the world, chatted, had some immediate chemistry. And I looked at the offer and showed a couple of friends, and they said, yeah, it sounds like a good idea. So my gut feeling said, this is a great opportunity. It's what you want to do. And so I said yes, and I liquidated all of my possessions. You want my big screen TV? Come over and get it. Gave away my couch, all my furniture. Unfortunately, much of my BJJ book collection, my beloved book collection. And then I got on a plane with 2 duffel bags. One had all kimonos in it, and the other just a few of my clothes and personal effects. Got on a plane and came to a new life. And I was very inspired and motivated by another one of your podcast guests named Steve Maxwell.
Yeah.
Steve Maxwell has become a bit of a, I don't know what term he would use to describe himself, but I call myself a BJJ monk, where I've gotten rid of most of my earthly possessions, and I got on a plane and traveled to the other side of the world, and I'm meeting people and kind of making it up as I go along. And so far, it's been a terrific experience, not without its struggles, because there are cultural differences. There's climate differences, and I'm teaching a lot more over here than I did at my home academy, Gracie Baja, Calgary. But it's been a terrific experience, and it's also part of the global expansion of BJJ. I don't want to overstate my own contribution to this, but it's a really exciting time to be involved in BJJ and have the chance to influence people in other countries, other parts of the world that are as interested in BJJ as you and I were when we first started, Byron.
Yeah. Why do you think that they wanted specifically an English-speaking instructor? And the language is it Mandarin there?
Yes, it's kind of a dialect of Mandarin. They call it Taiwanese. So a lot of my pre-trip Pimsleur Mandarin was rendered kind of ineffective.
Oh, no.
Well, you find out when you get on the ground in a hurry that your Pimsleur Mandarin isn't going to cut it when it comes time to order lunch.
So why did they want an English-speaking instructor there?
Well, English has become the global language.
Okay.
If you're coming from a Chinese environment, you'll find that very few people in the rest of the world can use Chinese. And I'm learning to read and write some basic Chinese now and speak, and it's tremendously challenging. So there is very much a sense over here, at least in Taiwan, in China, that you need to learn English to be part of, well, our rapid globalization. The borders between countries and cultures have largely dissolved because of the internet. For no money, we can have a conversation clear across the world, like you and I are at this very moment. And BJJ is very much an English thing now. It's arguable to say it's growing the fastest in the USA, even faster than Brazil, I would say.
It sounds like an amazing journey that you've taken, and you ended up having a desire to go somewhere kind of where you're at, and it was just kind of put on your lap at the appropriate time, and you jumped on the opportunity for that. Sounds like a very interesting journey that it'd be hard to have predicted that would have happened the way that it did.
You're right. I'm personally not a big believer in luck, but the way this tumbled out was quite a set of coincidences. So I'm really happy to be over here and a chance to be one of the earliest, kind of black belts in Taiwan. There were 3. I was the 3rd when I arrived here, and since a 4th has moved here. And but this is a country of close to 30 million people, so that's 4 black belts in the entire country. and there are 2 in one academy. So there's not an abundance of places to come to teach or to train jiu-jitsu. But it's growing, and every day we have people wandering in off the street. Where the academy I live at, I actually live in the gym in Taipei. We're located across the street from one of the largest universities in Taiwan. So we have students wandering up and down the street, and they want to know what is this Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And very different from, those of us who are immersed in the BJJ world. When these people come in off the street, they don't know who Royce Gracie is. They don't know who the Gracies are. They don't know who Andre Galvao is. They don't know who Buchecha is. They don't know what the Moon Jiaos mean. None of that is a pull for them. They want to learn self-defense, or they want to learn a cool kind of foreign art that has great moves. So this is very different here in terms of what's bringing people in. And there's also a greater educational component to my approach. So, for example, if you're an academy owner in California, most people are going to know what BJJ is. They're going to walk in already knowing what it's all about. Here in Taiwan, it's quite different. They will have zero idea what it is. How is this different than Kung Fu or MMA or Sanda or any of the other martial arts that the club might offer?
I imagine it's different as you get these different answers coming in. Is there, you ask your student, what brought you here? What's your why? And they give you, just walking by and I was curious, or self-defense, or but you're not going to get the I saw Royce Gracie a long time ago, or I saw the UFC. Does this affect their way as a student, do you think? Are they there just to like get a little taste test of it and see what it's like? Or are these students like they come in just on a whim? Are they just as likely to stay for many years and stick with jiu-jitsu as any other student anywhere else in the world that gives it a try?
Geez, I wish I had a better answer for that.
Yeah, it's a hard question.
Yeah, after this many years of teaching jiu-jitsu in various academies, I am no closer to guessing when a student comes in the door whether they are going to stay or not. So, for example, we get 2 students that come into our fundamentals class tonight. And one of them looks fairly athletic, high level of energy, and is very enthusiastic during the class. And they want to know why this technique works and how can I do this and so on. And you think, okay, we got a pretty good prospect here. They're going to sign up for sure. And then the other student is very quiet, doesn't seem to be particularly interested in any of the moves that come up in the class. And I think, well, this person probably had a different expectation of what this was going to be about. They're giving it a try. It's not their thing. So be it. Well, the next fundamentals class, guess who shows up with a brand new gi they bought signed up? So this has happened to me enough times that it's a head scratcher, and I gave up actually trying to predict, who's going to come. What I have found is that when you ask the students when they come in, what made you decide to try this? I don't think one has told me yet, I really want to compete in something, and I saw Buchecha or Galvao, and I decided this is what I need to do. None of them say that. Some people say they are looking for an activity that's more interesting to them. A friend of theirs tried it. Overwhelmingly, people say they want to learn self-defense, which I think is true in just about any martial arts business. Now, this is a little bit puzzling in a very safe society like Taiwan, where there's very few risk of personal danger when you're out in public. I mean, culturally, it's very different here, where someone parked a mountain bike in front of the academy on the street without being locked a week ago. It's still there. Now, I wouldn't try that in Chicago, probably. But
you can lock it in Chicago, and it's still going to be gone in a little while.
They'll steal the lock too, won't they?
So, I mean, maybe that's just a human desire. Even if you live in a place with no significant amount of water, you still want to know how to swim. I mean, it's a basic skill that people should know how to swim. You should know how to defend yourself. You should know how to cook some basic meals. I think it's just a desire to have the ability to defend yourself is a common thing that people want to be able to do. And so maybe that's, even though there's no real need for it there, they still want to have that and to be experienced with it. Maybe, I don't know.
I agree with you, and I think that this comes partly from the level of fear that's in this society, where if you turn on the news, what are you going to see? Oh, this happened.
Yeah.
That happened. This violent act was perpetrated. Well, I think there's a general sense of unease in the society where people are looking for something that's going to make them have some sense of personal security. So I think this is what gets people in the door. This is the compelling reason why they're going to get on Google and go BJJ, Taipei, and come down and try it. What I think keeps them there is not necessarily competition, which it does for some, but looking at BJJ as a means of personal development, which was what has held me in BJJ for this many years. I was never really very interested in BJJ competition. Getting started in a club that was very competitive, like Marcus Suarez's gym, made you realize in a hurry where you were in the so-called pecking order. So, for example, let's say you're a guy who's the toughest guy in your garage. You're from a small town.
Yeah.
And you've got some muscles and you train with your buddies and, you can hit the arm bar anytime you want. So you take a trip to a place like American Top Team, where they have a stable of professional fighters. It's a professional athletic environment. You will find out in a hurry where you are with that. Are you really do you have the mettle, the capacity to do that? Do you have the will and the physical ability? Or are you really more of a dilettante, someone who is going to enjoy it and stay fit, but isn't really at that level? So, coming up in that environment at a more of a hardcore environment, I decided fairly early that I was in good shape. I like to compete within the academy. I like to roll with those guys, but there was something different in the way I approached it and probably my talent and my level of ability compared to the guys who would go on and have 50 MMA fights. So if competing and winning a medal wasn't going to be the reason that I persevered in what can be a very difficult, endeavor at times, what is it that made me go on? And for me personally, it was about trying to maximize my potential. How good could I get at this? Was I maximizing my own, for lack of a better word, God-given abilities? And I found value in the struggle every day, in the disciplines, in overcoming my own slothful behavior, feeling lazy. You're flicking through the channels on TV. Well, should I get up and go to Jiu-Jitsu or not? And every time you overcome that, no, I'll just lay here. Get up, get your gi, go down to the academy. Right? You strengthen a muscle inside of you. And I think if there's a benefit to the average person from doing BJJ, beyond personal self-defense or fitness, it's that. It's having a discipline in your life and extending your own kind of capacities, testing your abilities in a day in and day out basis. And I think it's the challenge of taking on something really difficult, something that's well beyond the comfort zone of most people, and then starting to see some progress, getting a few taps on someone that really ignites the desire in people and gets them addicted and wanting to buy a bunch of new gis and go to the academy now 4 times a week and get involved in the whole so-called BJJ lifestyle. You
mentioned a few minutes ago that you trying to figure out how good you can get at this. And that was a desire for you. And maybe it's, I know it's changed for me over the years. Sometimes I want to be as good at performing jiu-jitsu as I can. And then sometimes I want to be really good at helping somebody else and teach jiu-jitsu. And those are two different things, but how good you become at jiu-jitsu and how good of an instructor you could become are two different things, but they're very important. And the ability to help other people also, I think, would help with your personal development as well. So,
yeah, well said. I kind of stumbled into teaching a bit by accident. I was a fitness instructor when I was in university and used to do a little bit of personal training. I used to do a little bit of bodybuilding, not the steroids, 250 pounds with 0% body fat bodybuilding. I just tried to eat well and stay in good shape organically. So I had some experience teaching. But at the academy, Marcus Suarez's academy, he would need to go back to Brazil periodically. So, and when he would go for a month. So he needed someone to run classes.
Yeah.
In his absence. So Dennis Kang, who went on to have many fights in Pride and Dream in Japan and Korea, he would teach the night classes. And I got the chance to teach in the day classes. And it wasn't because I was anywhere near the caliber of fighter that someone like Dennis Kang was. I just clearly didn't have his ability. But what I could do, what my talent was to watch Dennis do a move. And some of the students would say, "How did you do that?" And he may or may not be able to explain how he did it. But I could say, "Stop." I would say to the fighter, "Go back to that position. Now watch. Do the move again. Now watch where his leg goes and watch how he changes his weight." And so then the student who had the question will go, "Oh, that's how he did it." So from very early on, I seemed to be able to dissect what was happening. Even if I couldn't do it as good as you, I could watch you and say to one of the other students, "Oh, watch, this is what he's doing." And so Marcus Suarez identified that in me and gave me some confidence very early on where I was not the best fighter, but he said, "You know how to teach," in this thick Brazilian accent. So it was a tremendous confidence booster to me as a young man to be entrusted with running his classes during the daytime when he went to Brazil. This was known as one of the best academies in the country at the time. And to be given that, I consider it an honor to be able to run his classes. It really gave me some faith that I had something to contribute to this, even if I wasn't going to be the best competitor.
Yeah, you had the ability to break things down and to explain them well, that many of the great competitors lack that ability. They're just, some people are good at one thing and some people are good at another. And I think that's a very important trait to have as somebody who could teach things well.
Yes, well said.
What belt were you at when you started teaching, when he would go to Brazil?
I was a blue belt when I taught my first classes. Now, if you go into an academy in the USA now, there's more blue belts. You can't swing a dead cat without hitting a blue belt. But at the time, in the earliest years of the jiu-jitsu in North America, if you were a blue belt, it was kind of a big deal. And ironically, at the time, I felt really confident in my abilities compared to now when I'm a black belt and know a lot more. I just had a sense of invincibility, perhaps, that came from ignorance. But now I know how vulnerable you truly are, and how good other people can be, how little I actually know about some jiu-jitsu positions or submissions.
That's cool to hear.
Go ahead.
That's really cool to hear that. A lot of students, white belts and blue belts, they look at a black belt and they think that that guy knows so much about jiu-jitsu. He's got to know it all. And then to hear that from you and to hear that from other people, that it's just a learning process. You're always going to be learning. There's always more to grow. you feel like you know less now as a black belt than you did as a blue belt. You were more confident in what you're doing. It's just so much to take in and to learn. It's amazing.
I think part of it comes from when you get to black belt, you become truly expert in a few positions. So, for example, let's say you're a spider guard player. Well, you know every different variation of the grips, and here's 20 sweeps I can do, and so on. Now you step back and you say, well, there's a lot of different guards. There's a lot of different positions. How many of the other positions do I have that black belt depth of understanding in?
Yeah.
And you have to admit to yourself, well, I only know a handful of these. And you realize if you got into the guard of someone who has that level of, that depth of knowledge in another guard that you don't know, you are in deep water. So I think you develop a sense of humility about just how much you really know.
Yeah, and that's also really good advice for anybody who's thinking about competing, is the idea to take your match and put it like in a funnel and get it to that position you're really good at, to find your way to that place and make that person be totally lost in something that you're very strong at. That's a good way to be. You mentioned that you teach a lot more classes there than you did in Canada. What's your student base like? How many people are you dealing with in a class or in a week?
I teach 3 classes a day in different cities. So I'm based in Taipei, but there's a smaller city that's on the coast called Hsinchu, where I will travel to 2 days a week and teach. And I have a mix of foreigner students. Usually they are from European countries or North America here teaching English and have a much greater awareness of BJJ. And then I have native Taiwanese here. Now, it can be a little bit challenging in terms of language because my Chinese is at a white belt level. I'll be honest about that. Their English can be almost non-existent.
Wow.
Now, the classes can be only a couple of students show up, but I've seen that in any place I've been to. I think the biggest class I've had here so far was 18 students. Now, the training rooms or the dojos here are not this expanse that you have come to expect in places like North America, where there's a lot more real estate and we can have these huge matted areas.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a different environment.
Just the square foot of it all, it's gonna be less, it sounds like.
Correct. Well, even if you go to Brazil, have you been to Brazil yet, Byron?
I have not yet been to Brazil.
I would recommend getting on the plane at some point and checking it out. And one of the things that surprised me my first trip to Brazil was you're going to go into an academy that is a legend, a mythic academy. I call it the Mecca of Jiu-Jitsu. So I went into the Royce Gracie Academy in Copacabana expecting this huge facility, but it's actually just a small room up an unmarked staircase on a side street in Copacabana.
Wow.
And I went into some other academies in Copacabana that are just small office spaces, but they put some mats down. And so the academy itself, if you want to use that word, is divided up into 2 little office rooms where you could probably get 4 people training at once. Then the other room, another 4 people. Yet they're producing this terrific jiu-jitsu. And for many years, it was the Mecca to go to for BJJ.
And was that just, clearly you don't need like a lot of equipment and all that sort of thing in space, but just the quality of the instruction and what was being passed down was the main reason, you think, or do you know?
I think I would agree with that, yes. I think that they had, I don't know what the best word for it, maybe a laboratory there with a lot of experienced black belts getting together in concentrated environments and just battling it out every day and innovating and experimenting and competing against each other. And so it was this crucible where these experiments and innovations were taking place on a daily basis. And I think you're seeing some of that now in places like Athos, which is in San Diego, Andre Galvalo's academy. For those of you who follow competitive BJJ, where you're getting a concentration of these great minds of jiu-jitsu, and they're getting together on a weekly basis and testing each other and forcing this arms race of your sweep is not defendable, but I'm going to defend your undefendable sweep, and then you're going to find a way to beat my defense, and so on and so forth. And so I see a guy like Keenan Cornelius, who is coming out with some of the incredible new variations in sport jiu-jitsu with his lapel guard and worm guard and so on. And I think that happens in these environments that are very concentrated. You get these great minds together, and there's a brain, I don't know what the word is, brain trust or mastermind group. Yeah, Napoleon Hill calls it a mastermind group, where you're going to achieve more than you could if you were training in separate academies in smaller places and coming up with the innovations on your own.
It just seems like they're all, well said, they're kind of collecting together, and they're finding ways to beat their own systems, and then when they go out and they show the world what they have, a lot of times the world ends up kind of a little surprised about what's going on, and sometimes it seems effortless because the people don't even know the first counter, let alone the second and third that they've already come up with solutions to. But there's also that world going on online where people are seeing the techniques happen all the time. And I know when you first started jiu-jitsu, there was no way to go check out the videos of what's going on in today's grappling scene and have it spread that way. It was really just from training partner to training partner largely, and maybe you had a VHS tape back then. I don't know. Like you get I guess there's different ways the information is found and distributed. It sounds like really talented people coming together and train and develop that. And then also that is kind of spread throughout the world a lot quicker than it used to be.
Oh, that's for sure. Again, we're going back to in the old days. But I used to literally ship poorly copied VHS instructionals across the country of Canada to a guy in another city who had a few titles that I wanted. And you'd hotly anticipate your videotapes arriving, study them, and you'd find a new secret move. And this was in the day where the internet was very new, and there was no YouTube.
Yeah.
Now we almost have the opposite problem where there's such a deluge of information that you don't know where to pick. I have videos that I've downloaded on my computer that I can't get to. I can't watch all of the information, let alone actually take it onto the mat, drill it, deconstruct it, figure it out, and add it actually to my game. So we're very spoiled for choice now, and I think we're alive at the greatest time in history to have access to all this incredible information.
I think there's also like a good and a bad with that because the large population of newer students has this huge information coming at them, and it's hard to discern the quality information. And not just that, but like even if some world champion is showing a technique, I'm sure it's a great technique, but is that right for me if I'm a new student? And it's hard to kind of discern that. So I think there's still a tremendous amount of value from walking into your academy and asking your coach a question. And I think that may be one of the big reasons why you're there where you're at. And they could watch videos all day long, but they want you to teach classes as an instructor in person.
Yes, exactly. Since I've been here in Taiwan, there are some students who have, in fact, been training for more than 5 years. And when I got here, I noticed that a lot of the students moved very well. You could tell they had the coordination and some mat time where they had a sense of balance and kind of knew where they were going. But I would observe them pausing in certain positions and looking for a technique that they just didn't have in a certain position. So they didn't have quite the technical background that you might see in North America.
Yeah.
And I remember one student several times who's competed in a number of different formats, MMA and submission grappling, BJJ, would come to my class and I would show a technique he's seen before, but I would add on 2 small details. And you could see the light bulb go on over his head and he'd go, oh, that's why it didn't work for me in the competition. He'd say, that is exactly what my opponent did. He got his elbow on the ground in this case. So to echo what you're saying, the value is in not just seeing new moves, but to have a black belt instructor on the mat where you can feel his technique. And he can point out to you not only the specific detail, grab this way, don't grab that way, but can also reduce the position to its essence and make it easy to remember. So Zanji Ribeiro, who I've done a seminar with, was excellent at this. So, for example, last night I taught how to pass the half guard. And I said repeatedly to the students, put him flat.
Yeah.
So we know a lot of different passes, don't we? But most of them are not going to work unless we do the very simple thing, put him flat. So I think this is also the value of having the black belt there who can take the complex and reduce it to the simple for you.
And that's a great example. If someone is familiar with half guard passing, if you're not doing that first step, or you're not able to attain that, it can be very difficult to pass anybody's half guard unless you could get them flat on their back, and then you can get to working. But many students will just be learning different passes, and they won't realize that this is a common theme, and then you need that little nudge or that instruction that, don't forget, all these are going to do the same basic thing. You're going to put them flat before you start to pass.
Yes, exactly.
So it seems like for quite a while you had your life is kind of centered around BJJ. Could you just kind of fill us in on what that's been like and how it's helped you on or off the mat?
Yes, I've had a few different perspectives on BJJ since I started. When I started, I was 20 years younger than I am right now. And I was much more of a bull, much stronger, faster, younger, all of those things. And I really had a competitive approach to it. How fit could I get? Could I outlast the other guy? How many, push-ups could I do? I tried to perfect my machine. And unfortunately, as it does for many athletes, real life starts to intrude. You get past a certain age where just being able to choke or arm lock people isn't enough in life. You need to have a career. You need to be generating some income. And I heard a great one-liner, Jiu-Jitsu skills don't pay the bills. So I needed to distance myself a little for several years from just being a mat rat and concentrate on going back to school, getting some programming and database skills where I could generate some money. And while I was successful at that and did actually get a career that I could make money at and pay all my bills and all of those things, I really missed being around the mat. But I also had a black or white mentality when it comes to training. And I see a lot of guys have this mentality where unless they're training all out, then there's no point in training. And this is a conflict. If you've come from a period where you were training seriously, well, what's the point in even going unless I'm going to be training 4 times a week and doing all these repetitions and so on? So I had a bit of a conflict. I thought, well, what's the point in training? How can I even go any further? So I got to a point being a purple belt, but I was drinking more beer on weekends and sporadically training. Well, I had a bit of a life-changing event that happened when I went to Brazil. So I went to Brazil for the first time in 2009. I was a purple belt. And I went to Brazil for more reasons than just training jiu-jitsu. At the time, I wasn't interested in training twice a day and, staying in a room with a bunch of other mat rats. I wanted to go to the beach. I wanted to see a lot of things. But when you're down in Brazil and you're a big BJJ fan, you need to go and check out the academies, of course. So I went to the original Carlson Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Academy in Copacabana, which is not easy to find. If you ever need to find it, message me. I'll tell you the instructions how to find this place. All right? And so I went in, and I was not in my absolute best shape, but I did my best. I'm at one of the meccas of Jiu-Jitsu, and it was just a great thrill to walk up the stairs, see the sign on the door, put my gi on, bow, get on the mat, and roll around. It was just a terrific experience. But I had modest expectations of myself. I was a recreational purple belt at the time, not in the best shape. But I had a different experience there in a way I could not have predicted. So, and here's what I mean by that. When you're in North America, the majority of black belts you will have seen were people that owned their own schools and were very serious about jiu-jitsu. Or also you'll meet Brazilians who are competitors and have to teach as a means of generating some income, but are really super athletes. So you get a different concept of what a black belt is. They're usually either professional martial artists or they're these, 25-year-old Brazilians who are competitors. So you tend to see black belts as almost supermen. But when you go to Brazil, where the art and sport have been long established there, you'll see guys who've just been doing jiu-jitsu a long time, have a pretty good level of skill, but they are professionals in other areas of their lives. Well, this had never occurred to me before. I thought either you're a Superman black belt or what's the point of training?
Yeah.
And I saw a different way to pursue jiu-jitsu. And there was one simple thing that happened, one lunch class I was there that really affected me deeply. And I was at the academy and we had finished rolling, and one of the students who I recognized who was a brown belt, he was in his late 30s. He came up into the academy and he was wearing a shirt and tie, and he was obviously some type of professional working nearby. And he was all excited, talking in full volume Portuguese to his buddies, getting him more and more excited. He ran into the change room, put on his gi, came out, had one roll, got off the mat promptly, ran back into the change room, put his shirt and tie back on, went back to his work. And I thought, oh, this guy is doing this not because he's a competitor or wants to fight in the UFC. This is just part of his life. He's made jiu-jitsu part of his lifestyle. He loves coming down to the academy to see his friends. It does something for him. It provides some type of satisfaction and enrichment to his life beyond the chance to get a gold medal in a competition. I thought, well, I could do that. I'm 40 years old. I'm never going to be a Mundial's champion. So what's the point of training? Well, maybe that's the point of training. So that really gave me a different paradigm or philosophy of how I could find my own place in jiu-jitsu. So after that, when I returned to Canada, I decided that I could have jiu-jitsu in my life as a means of staying fit, being around my friends, continuing to develop myself, my jiu-jitsu, without feeling I had to reach a standard of what the 23-year-old competitors were doing. And this is a struggle that a lot of people who aren't in that very competition-centric mentality, they have to find this for themselves.
I think, looking back at the beginning of your interview, you mentioned getting to go to Taiwan and meet the people and make friends over there. And Jiu-Jitsu has been a tremendous vehicle for you to do that. It's not just, like kind of alluding to now, it's not just about training and getting good at choking people. It's about developing amazing relationships on the mat as well. And it sounds like that's something that you found a lot of value in.
Yes, well said. And I'm sure you as operating the podcast, which thank you, it's a great service to the whole world of BJJ. You have the chance to come in contact with these people all over the world and share in this community and contribute to it. And it never fails to amaze me every day on my Facebook, which is largely devoted to BJJ. Someone from another area of the world somehow found out about my place in BJJ and then added me. And now we have this connection. So any city or country I want to travel to in the world, I have a chance to just connect with the BJJ Academy there and say, can I drop in and visit you guys? And so I have kind of a group of friends who would take me out to eat, show me some of the insider spots. It's just an incredible aspect to BJJ that you may not think of that first day when you walk into the academy and try class.
Yeah, and you may not think of it the first 10 years. I mean, like I said, there's a point in time in your life when you realize that when you saw that guy come in and just train, pure recreation and just have fun with it and be with his friends. It's like, that's when it happened for you. But it might take somebody a long time to get to that point. And a lot of people, unfortunately, probably don't ever get to that point. They never understand that there's more to it than just the techniques and the moves. There's so much more off the mat that it's going to give you.
Yes, well said.
What would you say would be? It seems like you've had a lot of phases through jiu-jitsu, like a perfect day as a BJJ bum.
This is one of my favorite topics to talk about. For those of us who grew up in lifting weights or so, there was always this magazine image of moving down to California, Venice Beach, like Arnold, pumping iron and hanging out on the beach, getting a tan, meeting girls in bikinis, living a California lifestyle. And this was always tremendously appealing to me as a young dude, especially in those winter months up in Canada. And there's a BJJ counterpart to this. If you've ever seen The Day of the Zen with Mario Sperry, have you ever seen this documentary?
No, I have not.
Okay, I got to hook you up with a link. What it is it's a silent camera crew following around Mario Sperry, who was at that time fighting in Pride.
Yeah.
Was one of the, founders of Brazilian Top Team, following him around in Rio de Janeiro, where he lived, and training at different academies and going down to the beach and so on. And this just illustrated a dream for me. The idea of going down to Brazil and living like one of these fortunate carioca souls living there. So I went to Brazil for 2 months a couple of years ago and worked from my laptop because I was able to generate income doing, development projects from anywhere in the world, which is a pretty cool thing to look into. But for 2 months, I had a lifestyle where I wake up in the morning, whatever time I'm ready to wake up, and you can hear the tropical birds outside. Okay, put your flip-flops on, your board shorts, your jiu-jitsu t-shirt, grab your kimono, and walk to the academy. So during that trip, I trained at the original Gracie Baja Academy in Baja Tijuca. And you show up in the morning and everything's super chill. Go up there, there's usually a few foreigners from different parts of Europe or around the world, and of course all the Brazilians. And they're super chill, super warm people. So you do a little bit of jiu-jitsu at one of the very best academies in the world. You're seeing some of the best technical innovations. You're with black belts who've been black belts for 20 years. And they're showing you all kinds of little tricks and tweaks to your game. Terrific. Okay, you get a little roll in or something, you got a good sweat, you're relaxed. Now it's time to get a bite to eat. Now instead of in Canada where right after the jiu-jitsu class, people are checking their watches and their cell phones. Well, I got to get going. I got to get back to work. You don't have to do that.
Yeah.
Then. So let's just head down the street that's just outside the academy. By the way, you can actually see the beach from the mats at the Gracie Baja Academy in Tijuca. It is inspiring.
Wow.
So you go down the street and they have these little suco stands. Sucos means juice in Portuguese. And you grab yourself one of those infamous acais and you sit and you watch the girls walk by, the people, and you talk about jiu-jitsu and you practice your Portuguese. And then maybe you want to have lunch. So you go to something called a per kilo place. What that means is like a little buffet where you pick your vegetables, your rice, your beans, your grilled meats. It's all very affordable. Get a plate, sit around the table with the jiu-jitsu guy, laugh, tease each other. Okay, after that, ate some good healthy food, you did some training. Now I go back to where I was staying, work for a couple of hours on my laptop. No big deal. You know, the hottest part of the day, you hide in your room, you do a little work, make some money, communicate with people on the other side of the world. In the evening, you want to, if you have a desire, you want to go train a second time, go ahead. For me, training once a day is enough for me. You can just walk down to the ocean, watch the sun go down. There's a lot of Brazilians cycling or rollerblading or running along the beach. They have these little areas where they have chin-up bars and dip bars and sit-up boards and so on, right on the beach. So you could do, you know, your calisthenics, a little bit of workout, and have dinner at one of the healthier places around. And it's, if you feel tired from training, go to sleep with the aircon on, all the pillows, and know you're going to do it again the next day. Just brilliant. And Byron, that never got tiring.
I don't know how it could get tired. It sounds like a perfect lifestyle for anybody who loves jiu-jitsu, and you're wrapping so many other things into your daily routine there that it just sounds like an amazing experience that anyone would enjoy. And you've got me wanting to book my trip to Brazil sooner rather than later.
Well, I've got some hookups for you when you decide to go down there, but you'll have the time of your life. You're in jiu-jitsu heaven down there. And some people say to me, well, Mark, why go there to go to Brazil? I mean, you got some of the greatest names in jiu-jitsu teaching in California. Well, I don't want to take anything away from the California experience. But to me, there's something different about being in Brazil. It's not just the jiu-jitsu. There's good jiu-jitsu in a lot of places. But it's also the cultural experience of speaking a little Portuguese, watching the Brasileiras, the girls, walk down the beach. I mean, if you're a young guy training jiu-jitsu, you get your sunglasses and get a cold juice, go down to the beach. Those girls in the thong bikinis you see in the postcards and the videos, I can assure you they are there. You will see them, and it's a great adjunct to, you know, just training in the academy every day.
You also mentioned several times about like eating different foods in Brazil and eating healthy things. As far as like a diet for a jiu-jitsu person, what do you recommend? What do you think about the jiu-jitsu diet?
Well, this is a good question, and it's something I ask every jiu-jitsu guy who I go to a seminar with. Go to Andre Galval seminar, I ask him. Go to Hamalu Bahal seminar, I ask him what he eats. And this becomes increasingly important to you after the age of 25. And if we just say that every 5 years your body's athletic capacity diminishes a little, I wish it didn't, but it does, then your nutrition becomes increasingly important. So a great simple rule of thumb is if the food doesn't go bad, doesn't have an expiration date, you probably shouldn't be eating it. So most of the jiu-jitsu guys know that they need to fuel their bodies properly. And this is not exactly a newsflash to most of you. But you should be eating a lot more raw, unrefined foods, greens, vegetables, fruits, meat. If you want to eat meat, red meat or chicken or fish, that you can identify that it's actually the chicken. It's not a processed, breaded, deep fried, mechanically deboned, preserved cutlet of some type. So it's not a big again, it's not a newsflash to most people. You need to eat better. But there are also reasons for eating better that go beyond just simple, well, I'm going to lose some weight. I have a beer gut or something like that. I found that it really helped me for reducing my joint pain. And this isn't something that you'd think of at first when it comes to your diet. So most jiu-jitsu guys are pretty used to dealing with joint pain. And I got a lot of advice to try something like glucosamine, chondroitin, fish oil capsules, all these different supplements. And I thought, I tried them all with some limited success. Some of them do work. And as an over 40 brown belt, really trying to get my black belt, I had a lot of joint pain. Well, I met this other black belt when I was traveling in Costa Rica who was a big fan of green smoothies. I said, well, what's that? I had only thought of, you get a banana or a pineapple smoothie. And he said he had a really expensive blender. I think it was a Blendtec. And he'd throw kale and spinach and all these vegetables in it and drink this once per day. And he said this provided all the rich green nutrients that we all need. Well, I thought, why not? I'll give it a try. Well, they say there's something called the law of unintended consequences. And when I started taking these kale smoothies, my joint pain went away. Well, I didn't expect for this to happen, but it happened. So I did a little more research into this. By the way, Joe Rogan, the UFC commentator, is a big fan of these also. So check out, Google any of his information on this. I found out that these green smoothies have an anti-inflammatory effect. And so when you have really bad elbows or your fingers are sore, you think from gripping the gi, a certain amount of that comes with being a jiu-jitsu guy. But it doesn't mean you have to suffer that. And as soon as I started taking these green smoothies, I quit taking all of the other things because my joint pain went away. It may work that way for you. It may not. But I can tell you with my own experience, it really worked for me.
Yeah, I do make a smoothie, which I probably should do more often. I put spinach in it, and I can't taste the spinach. I don't know how the effect of kale would be, but spinach just kind of blends up and it's just in there, but I can't taste it.
Well, let's be honest. Drinking a kale shake, especially with that really powerful black kale, or it's also known as dinosaur kale, it's what nutritionists call these superfoods. It's just super nutritionally dense. Well, you're not going to be sitting around on a Saturday afternoon sipping this for pleasure, all right? But as especially an older athlete who has certain disciplines, there are things that you need to do in your athletic regimen that you don't want to do, but you do it because you need to do it. And this is one of those things. So the way I fit it into my own daily training regimen was I would have this 30 minutes before I train. Because honestly, when you get on the mat, you want to have as empty a stomach as possible. You don't want to be doing backwards rolls with a full, 12-inch Subway sandwich. But you also need to have an adequate amount of blood sugar going through your system at the time where you're not feeling faint or weak or getting dizzy, right? So I would recommend, first of all, you have to buy a decent blender. You can't just go down to, Walmart and get a $30 jobber and expect to throw in all these cruciferous vegetables, blend it up and have something smooth. It's going to be chunky. So you need to get one of these more expensive. Blendtec is one of the names, and you're going to be a little surprised, some sticker shock. It's going to cost you a few $100s. And, but you need to get one of those. But look at it as an investment in your health. And you do your shopping once or twice a week for all your vegetables. I bought a big Tupperware thing or a big plastic container. Put them in there, keeps them fresh. And one of the things, here's a little trick you can add to make it taste better. You can usually buy these liquid forms of acai. Here in, at least in Canada, we couldn't get the real fresh berries shipped frozen from the Amazon. So I go to a health food store and you could buy this thick acai paste in a bottle. I'd add a half a cup to my blender, and I could at least fool myself and tell myself I was in Brazil when I was training.
It sounds like an interesting recipe with good health results that you've experienced there. So,
well, you've got to do whatever you can to keep yourself on the mat.
yeah.
In the podcast that you did with Steve Maxwell, Steve was talking about how there's an attrition of practitioners past a certain age. And he talked in your podcast about when he goes to seminars, he said how many people are over 35, 40, etc. Now, after you get after 35, a lot of people quit. And why are they quitting? Because they're getting injured or they have a lot of pain. Apart from the other life commitments that all of us have, but not really the subject of this. And a lot of that is a nutritional approach to preventing things from happening in the first place and making your body, whatever your potential is, the best you can using a tool like a green smoothie.
Right. Yeah, like you said, it's a tool that's going to help keep you on the mats, hopefully. I want to go back a little bit and talk about BJJ in Asia. How do you see it growing? Do you see tournaments happening there, or is it still in early phases of growth, or what's going on with just the environment there?
I think that there are some similarities to how BJJ came into the popular consciousness in North America, in that it piggybacked off the popularity of MMA. So what I mean by that is most people on the street, if you ask them, do you know what BJJ is? Do you know who is the current absolute world champion in BJJ? No one's going to know. But just about everyone's seen the UFC. Now, if you delve a little further, most people are aware that BJJ is part of, the three major disciplines that you need to be an MMA fighter: wrestling, striking, either Muay Thai or boxing, and BJJ. So this is how people, especially young guys, come into BJJ. Now, I forget which one of the Gracie Baja black belt said this, but he said that BJJ can piggyback on the popularity of MMA in that MMA creates spectators, not participants. So if you are a professional in some area of your life, you're a lawyer, accountant, dentist or so, you're really excited by watching the UFC. You want to stay fit. You want to get in there and mix it up a bit. But honestly, training MMA 3 or 4 times a week is probably not going to be a good fit for you. It requires a tremendous commitment. But what you can do is get on the mat, practice some BJJ, get fit, I would argue have less injuries than if you were training full-time MMA, and get involved in it in that capacity. So it allows you to feel like you're a bit of a part of the excitement of MMA by doing that aspect. So that's largely what's driving it here at this point in Asia. So if I were to ask tonight the students that are attending my class, how many of you know who Buchecha is, Rodolfo Vieira? No one will know. But if you mention a few things about UFC, well, everyone's seen the UFC. Now, that may change as we get more blue and purple belts here who are posting things on their Facebook, and their friends and family see this and start to become kind of educated in that aspect. Social media is a tremendous way to spread any information about BJJ. So in the future, how's it going to go here? I suspect largely the same way it's followed that path in North America or UK or other Western countries, where first it came into the public consciousness by MMA, then more and more people, so people become introduced that way, more and more people start doing it, and then do BJJ for BJJ's own sake, as a lifestyle, as an activity, as a way to stay fit.
With this growth happening there, you are constantly going to be dealing with, I think at most, basically any instructor anywhere is going to deal with a lot of beginners. What advice do you have for somebody who's teaching beginners and how to get them on the right path?
Well, I think with beginners, the first thing is they're overwhelmed by the tremendous complexity of BJJ. You know, I not to denigrate any other martial art, but if you take something like Muay Thai, well, you have some elbow strikes, you have your basic punches, your jab, your cross, your hook, uppercut, you have some kicks, and then afterwards, the real art of it, the complexity is your combinations and your sense of timing and so on. BJJ, in contrast, has, well, Byron, how many different moves would you say you know as a black belt?
I really don't know. I mean,
innumerable.
Yeah, I know an armbar, but I also know 30 different arm bars.
Yes.
From several different positions. So, I can't tell you.
This is just overwhelming to beginners, and nearly everyone says to me, they confide in me privately at the end of the class, I just can't remember all the techniques. How do I retain it? And they feel it's a personal failing of theirs, right? That they don't remember all the techniques every time. So I think this is something, as an instructor, you kind of have to manage people's expectations. So yes, it is overwhelming. There's a lot of stuff. So let's reduce this as simple as possible at the beginning. Just learn these things. So the best way to explain it came from my friend, his name's Stephen Kesting, who would be a great guest. Have you had him on the podcast
Not yet. I need to get him on.
Oh, yes, you do. He runs one of the largest websites on the internet for grappling, which I also write for. It's called grapplearts.com. And he talks about something called the positional hierarchy. Are you familiar with this term, Byron?
I'm not sure.
Okay, let me explain very briefly. It means the top to bottom order of the basic positions in Jiu-Jitsu. So we have rear mount, knee on belly,
okay,
side, all the way to the opposite end when you're caught in rear mount, when you're caught under the mount in the bottom. So this now we have a way of making sense of the chaos of a fight. So you should be able to stop the tape at any point during a BJJ match and identify where are you in the fight. Well, one guy's inside the closed guard of the other, or one guy has, half guard, that type of thing. And you and I, having been in BJJ for so long, take this for granted. We think everyone knows that they're in guard or mount, but as a beginner, you don't know. So first of all, I introduced this concept of all the different positions. Now, once you know that you're in the bottom of side control, well, what is your opponent trying to do? What's the basic fight with? Well, he's trying to put his weight on you, flatten you out, submit you. Well, what are you trying to do on the bottom? Well, you're trying to re-guard, get to your knees, and not get submitted, for example. Now your job as a white belt is to say, I need a technique to recover my guard from the bottom. I need to know where to put my hands, this type of thing. So I would say to the new student, understand what this positional hierarchy is. There's many places on the web where you can see the list. And then ask your instructor to give you the best solid technique from that position to understand what you're trying to do in each. Now, I call this a positional skeleton. So once we have fleshed this out and you know where you are and basically what you're trying to do, now we can start adding different techniques. We can start building your jiu-jitsu vocabulary. So at first, you're going to have one go-to side control escape. Well, we know there's more than one escape, but you have to start someplace.
Yeah.
So that is what I would say would be the starting point. Now, there's some other factors involved here. One of the things that's really helpful to have a black belt instructor is to get the mechanics correctly of your basic techniques. Now, just as a brief aside here, Byron, when I was down in Brazil last time, I was very fortunate to meet a guy named Gordo Correa. And he's known as the innovator of the modern half guard in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And also the BJJ coach of Rafael dos Anjos, who recently won the UFC lightweight championship. Well, when I was down in Brazil, I got introduced to Gordo, and I decided to take a couple of privates with him. And I didn't take privates on the newest spinning double reverse ninja Berimbolo. I wanted to do basic techniques like the cross choke from the guard. How do I recover full guard from half guard? How do I get the straight armbar from the guard? And well, you think, well, you're black belt, you should know all this already. Not true. There are these little differences in strategy, in grips, in timing. Refining my mechanics of the basics are the most important thing. So as a white belt, your understanding of how to do a basic straight arm lock from the mount will be very different from, you know, someone such as your own Byron. You know all of these little things. This is what the white belt needs to learn. And the last thing I would recommend, you know, advice for white belts is you're going to need to teach your body to do some of the movements that aren't very intuitive. My first BJJ instructor, Marcus Suarez, said that the most difficult thing for people to learn when they're starting BJJ is how to move the hips. It's not an intuitive human movement. So that's why the best BJJ warm-ups you see are not constructed of jumping jacks and push-ups and sit-ups, like conditioning exercises that don't inculcate a specific skill. They're things like shrimps, hip escapes, sit-outs, bridges. These are exercises that are going to develop your sport-specific muscles, but they're also going to teach your body movement patterns. So I will teach, I will run the same warm-up pretty well every time in my fundamentals class, and I get people doing bridges, hip escapes, and so on. Now, several months later, I'm going to show a technique that requires them to move their hips. They don't know it, but they've been doing that, you know, Mr. Miyagi wax on, wax off for months, and now their body has a head start on being able to move their hips to the side to get a triangle, for example. And along with that basic, you know, those basic movements, the shrimps and so on, or your mat fitness. I know it's a kind of a cliche in BJJ. Well, strength and size don't matter. Well, yes, they do matter. And you need to be fit enough to do jiu-jitsu. So those of you who came from other martial arts or are already very fit, this would probably be a little less of a shock to you. But if you've been mostly sedentary or inactive in your lifestyle and you start BJJ, it's going to be a real uncomfortable reminder that you have been playing more video games than you fit. So I think you need in general to start supplementing your BJJ training with something outside of the gym. And there's a lot of things you can do. You can lift weights, you can do kettlebells, which I love. Ask Steve Maxwell about that. You can run or swim or whatever. But really, you do need to be fit. And I recommend that you start taking that a little more seriously.
And it's a great motivation to stay fit. You'll perform better on the mat, and it may not be as fun to go lift weights or go do some other exercises as jiu-jitsu is, but it'll pay off hopefully on the mat for you later on.
Well said.
Well, I've had a tremendous time talking with you, and I'm very confident that the audience has learned a lot from you today. It's been a lot of fun getting a little bit of your knowledge today.
Yes, well, thanks for having me on. I would invite any of the people who heard the podcast and liked it to add me on Twitter. I'm not a huge Twitter guy, but I publish a couple of articles a week on jiu-jitsu and different topics. So if this sounds like something you might want to read, add me on Twitter, please.
Okay, is that
I guess you'll put the Twitter address in the show notes.
Absolutely. I'll put any sort of contact information you would like in the show notes. Is there? You mentioned a Facebook page as well.
Just my personal Facebook page. I'm not that big of a internet presence in terms of BJJ that I'd have, my own BJJ page. Although that might happen in the future. But yes, if you want to add me on Facebook, go ahead. Most of my friends all over the world are from BJJ.
All right. Well, I'll put them both on there for everybody to find you and connect with you. And I'm sure that people will be eager to do that and keep up with you and see what you're doing. And I
hope so.
So it's been a lot of fun talking with you. It's been an honor to have you on here. Thank you for your time very much.
Thanks, Byron, and keep training all of you listeners out there in the world of BJJ.
I want to thank Mark Mullen again for the interview. It was interesting. He was really having to help me out quite a bit, navigate the time difference and work out on my schedule here because it's significant being in Taiwan, the time difference and trying to find a good time. And he had certain days he was available, and so did I. But he was on his game and very professional as far as working with him online. That he was really nice to work with there, and I really enjoyed his journey. Like he said, so many different. He training in Brazil, training in Canada, training in Taiwan, and how he's able to make a living doing this, and just his lifestyle and that he's enjoying, just living jiu-jitsu and being seeing the world. So that's really neat.
Yeah, you think about it. What do people want to do? They want to enjoy themselves. They want a job that they enjoy, and then you see the world. And I mean, he's got it all. And you think about. You were talking about all those different places he had trained, and just think how much you can learn from that instead of, just training as myself in Wichita, Kansas every day. Just training in different countries, different people. That's just an awesome experience right there.
Yeah, a lot of fun. I'm sure we'll have him back on the podcast. He was so fun to talk to.
Yeah, and we'll probably use some of his articles, like you were saying earlier. He writes a lot for Gracie Baja. We've seen a lot of his stuff, and we will definitely be reading his articles in the future, too.
Yeah, he's also got a lot of articles on grapplearts.com. So next week, Gary, we've got an interview with a guy named PJ Wakus. He, the article today mentioned, that balance of work and life, and that's a lot of what we're talking about next week. And he shares it. He shares his story, and at times it's like I can't believe somebody's going through this, and how hard that would be. He's got 2 kids with it's called Angelman syndrome, and he just shares a story and how jiu-jitsu helps him, and the community is benefiting him, and just there's so much more to jiu-jitsu than just get on the mat and rolling or competing. What it means to him is just an amazing thing. Like you and me, Gary, what does jiu-jitsu mean to you? It's so much more than just the mat time. There's so much more to it than that. So it's
you can't even put it in words.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah, so it's just it's inspirational interview. You get to hear about somebody else that has overcome some difficult things, and he's doing well. So wait till next week, and we have a quote from Mark Mullen. He shares the quote of the week for next week too.
So you definitely have to tune in. You can't miss that episode. Going to be another good time.
I've been mailing out gi patches. Gary's mailed out a couple. If you want a gi patch, the easiest way, Gary, what would that be?
That would be to go on to iTunes, Stitcher Radio. Give us a review, a funny review. We like funny reviews. Hopefully we earn 5 stars. If not, tell us what we need to do to earn 5 stars. Write us a review, then send us an email either on Facebook on the BJJ Brick page or at bjjbrick@gmail.com. Let us know that was you. Give us your address so we can send that out to you. We'll get you out to a BJJ Brick gi patch. And sorry, we've kind of narrowed it down to only people who live in the United States because, as we mentioned before, we're poor podcasters and trying to save a little bit of money.
Yep, we send you the gi patch for free. We just gonna mail it to you, but you got to live in the U.S. But even if you write a review from outside the U.S., we really appreciate that, and we appreciate the support with that. He mentioned our Facebook page, website. We've got Twitter, whatever else you might want to type us in on YouTube's. We're all over the place, Gary.
Yeah, we're on the interwebs, so check out the interwebs.
If you have any questions you want Gary or I to answer on the air, send us an email at bjjbrick@gmail.com or hit us on the Facebook. Punch us on the Facebook. That sounds weird.
Punch us on the Facebook.
I don't think I've heard that before. I think I'm going to have to Google that, see if anybody else has that.
Yeah, well, we could use that for a quote of the week in 2 weeks.
There we go. So, Gary,
yes,
we are happily located here in the middle of the United States in a little town called Wichita, Kansas.
Not Wichita.
That's true. If somebody's traveling through, what should they do?
They should get a hold of us. bjjbrick@gmail.com. Our Facebook page. Let us know you're in town. We'd love to train. It's always a pleasure to train with fellow jiu-jitsu people who want to meet us, want to learn. We definitely want to learn from you guys. So always a good time.
I met a new guy at the gym. His name is Jacob, and he had been there 3 nights or so before I met him, and somebody told him that I'm the podcast guy, and we talk about it a little bit, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm on episode 7. I'm gonna listen to them all."
Whoa!
I said, "Whoa, easy, man." But that's really amazing that somebody would want to, have us in there that much, and we really appreciate it. Anybody listen to a full episode, that's amazing. But really cool. And I told him definitely hit up the episodes where the people that we have coming through town. You got to hear those guys. But anything that interests you, there's a lot of backlog of episodes, and I appreciate anybody downloading old episodes and listening to them. And he's taken on the monumental task of listening to all the episodes.
We should make a video about that and videotape him listen to the episodes.
That would
think that would be a hit.
Oh yeah, it would be like millions of views of people watching him listen to our show, right, Gary?
Yeah, definitely.
Do you imagine? I mean, how would that not go viral?
Yeah, that's.
How about this, Gary? Here's a video idea I've been mulling around. Get pepper sprayed, and then grapple different belt levels and see how it goes.
Yeah, well, I mean, we could use that. We could have, studies.
Would a black belt be turned to a blue belt with a little bit of pepper spray?
Yeah, well, they talk about that with MMA. They say, a black belt gets punched once, he's a brown belt. Gets punched twice, he's a purple belt. And just goes on from that. We could try different types of pepper spray. We could use tasers. A lot of different things we could use to test the effectiveness.
That's true. It sounds like a miserable video, but would be hilarious and maybe educational.
Yeah, yep. So what I'll do next week is I'll test those products out on you, and we'll use you as a test study.
We'll see about that. I'm not totally against the idea, but I want the video to come out well because I don't want to do it twice.
Yeah, good call.
So anyway, it's been fun, guys. Hope you had a good time this week.
Yes, we really appreciate you listening. Thank you.
And stay sweaty, my friends.
And don't forget to shower.
Thank you for listening. I hope you find the time today to roll. After all, the best way to get better at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
It's from the episode Breaking Muscle. Hold on a second. I said episode? Is that what I said?
Yeah.
Come on, Byron. I can do better than that.
Tired.